Hello, everybody. Cosmic blessings. This is Naraya from the Turning of the Ages Mystery School, and I am here for another episode of the Seed People Spotlight, where I introduce you to some of the incredible and diverse and dedicated people who are in one way or the other associated with this Turning of the Ages Mystery School. And today I have the great pleasure to be here with Emitt Dubé. Hello, Emitt. How are you doing?
Yeah, good day, good day. Yeah, doing well. What about you?
Yeah, I'm good. So it is a good morning to you, and from your side, it would be good evening to me. Because tell us, where are you even calling in from?
Yeah, I'm coming from Canada in British Columbia, so I'm about 3, 4 hours from Vancouver in a town called Penticton, and I've been living here for maybe about a couple months now as we basically travel around North America over the last couple months.
Hmm. Yeah, on that trail, I had the privilege to meet you in person at our annual gathering last year in, no, not the annual gathering, sorry, at our eclipse gathering at Faywood Hot Springs. That was just, it was phenomenal. And you were phenomenal at that event as well. So that's where we first met. And I have ever since been fascinated and really um, envisaged to have you on one of these episodes. So you joined the Turning of the Ages Mystery School team just those couple of months ago, and I think you extra came to that event to just meet these motley crowd of TOTAMS people, right? Well, maybe that's how we can, this is really real life TV here. Maybe that's what I can start off with. What was that like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, no, that was yeah, it was definitely I had spent a couple months beforehand with the school just looking at the recordings, looking at the monthly gatherings and looking all those things and getting the kind of the feel of what the school was about and what the school taught. And then yeah, then there was the opportunity to go to the Eclipse Gathering event where yeah, I got to meet you in person, got to meet Daniel in person, Shiva, and Lizzie and a bunch of other members of our team, which was yeah, which was great. Nice to meet everyone, see the energy behind it, but also to get that feel of what it is to be at an in-person astrology thing rather than just doing it online or just being one-on-one with one of my mentors in the past or just being a group of 3 people. So it was really cool to experience a school setting of astrology in person, like have being in a classroom of all people who study astrology at the end of the day and seeing how everyone has kind of these different perspectives and their own light to kind of bring to any interpretation. So it was really it was cool to see yeah, that the school feeling associated with astrology rather than the intimacy that usually comes from one-on-one readings or mentorships or apprenticeships kind of thing. So yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, that's great. That's actually really great that you're pointing that out because, I've always appreciated since I myself joined the school. I have looked far and wide, let's put it that way, for other even in-person events. And other than at these maybe large, whatever, expos, mind, spirit, I don't know what, conscious life expos, those kind of things. There's really nothing in person, let alone where a lot of the classroom is actually sitting with a group within a stone circle and looking at the night sky. It's not even an indoor classroom, right? And the classroom is going out and watch the eclipse together and do ceremony around that. And that is what I personally really, really value about this school. It is so, so rare these days, especially after the 2020 to 2022 events globally. Um, so much has gone just online, and everybody praises how great that is. And I praise how great it is to actually meet in person, heart to heart, soul to soul, under the stars, under the sun, and really do astrology that way, which is the hallmark, or one of the hallmarks certainly, of TOTAMs. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. That's really great. Now, one of the things that I really want to dig in with you here today is that, even before you turned the school, you were already a fully fledged Vedic astrologer. So that's what you are. And then you found your way to the school. So I would like to ask you to share a little bit more about that. And then obviously from that perspective, also how that maybe contrasts with the paradigm of this school, and what some of the major differences are, even though we do have material on the website as well about what those differences are and so on and so forth. I'll try to dig out some resources maybe and put those in the description below this video. But yeah, take it away. Yes.
Sure. Yeah, great question. And yeah, just to keep adding on the previous question, yeah, and that feeling of being in the hot springs together with everyone else under the night sky, like I had kind of forgot about that. But yeah, just being a bunch of astrologers sitting in a hot tub in the middle of the desert, looking up at the night sky and just talking and being like, "Oh, is that Capricorn there? Oh, there's Spica and there's Antares," and just like helping each other kind of all point out exactly what we're seeing in the night sky, and then connecting directly with the planets, because I think Saturn was out and so was Jupiter when we were down there. So just being able to see them come over the horizon in the in nature rather than being in a classroom. So yeah, that was life changing for sure. And to be out there with the laser pointer and point out the constellations and things like that, to actually do that in person was really a magical moment for me on that experience with the school. But yeah, to go back to your to the current question, yeah. So I was a practicing astrologer before the school, well, 100%. And I started by studying one-on-one with an a Russian trained astrologer, and he had his PhD in astrology from the University of St. Petersburg in Russia. So I was lucky enough to get found by him and for him to kind of teach me astrology. And he taught me kind of this middle way where he was using the Western charts, but using a Vedic interpretation system. So it was kind of like this weird middle ground of astrology that kind of existed there. And I worked with him kind of every Sunday or every couple Sundays for 8 hours for about a couple years. And that's how I kind of became an astrologer. And since then, I've picked up a couple other masters, some more trained directly with Vedic astrology. And again, most of these masters that I've had have been Eastern European, or connected with kind of the both sides, the Vedic side and the Western side. So there's always been kind of this mix when it comes to my readings and the interpretations that I offer people, is it kind of intertwines both of them. And one thing that I noticed when I was doing readings for people is I found a lot of it is very wordy. It's very like complicated, and like I would say things, and at the end of the reading, the people are like, "What just happened? Like, what did the person just say?" Like there wasn't a sense of grounding or like certainty with what was said. It was more like a mind blow. And as good as that was for like kind of like my ego in a way of being like, yeah, that's right. Like I gave a lot of cool, good information. There was still the side of like, no, like this needs to help people. This needs to be practical. This needs to be something that someone can grasp and walk out of this and can use, rather than having like that lost look in the eye. So then I started refining my own strategy of readings and breaking it down. So initially I broke it down into elements, and then eventually I broke it down into masculine, feminine, and depending on who was coming to me for a reading, I would approach it in different ways. So yeah, so that led me to again more study on my chart, and I discovered that there was some shamanism in my chart, and was like, okay, well, shamanism and the elements and masculine, feminine, and tantra basically all kind of work together. And through just through random searching online, I eventually found the shamanic astrology school, which is what the school used to be named before. And so this was a couple years ago that I found it. I'm like, oh, this is something that I'm eventually going to look into, because someone's already done the work of making astrology more basic, in the sense that breaking it down into masculine, feminine, and break it down into the elements. So instead of me having to do all the research and the work, I saw that Daniel had already done this work, essentially, or whoever else helped with the set up the paradigm. So I'm like, this is genius. And whenever I have time and space, I would like to commit to the school or give it some time. And then, yeah, and then last summer there was an opening for a manager, basically, to help operate the school. And I'm an electrical engineer with a background in human resources and automation, and that's kind of what the school was looking for, someone to really help with organizing it and setting it up to the next direction. So on a professional level, it aligned there for me, because I want to help a school get organized, get established in its vision, and help to make sure that the teachers and the students have what they need. And then the added part of that is, yeah, access to really start working my own practice with the material of the school. So, and since I've been with the school, it's been really interesting, because I do see that the paradigm does use more of a moon-based approach, which again is more of a Vedic approach than a Western approach. So the
Mm.
school is kind of already integrating Vedic principles, but also using the Western chart. So it's interesting to see kind of the difference between these two, and how Daniel's gone about to interpret the moon sign from a Western chart, where it still aligns with what I know and what I understand when it comes to the difference between Western and Vedic astrology. Um, and it's just really nicely put together on how accessible that astrology becomes through Daniel's way of doing it, or the Giamario approach. But there is still, in my opinion, a little more depth and realism in ways. Not that Western isn't real, but I find the Western chart helps you deal more with your ego, with your sun, with how you shine and what you're bringing to the world. Whereas the Vedic chart is more along the lines of your soul, along the signs of your internal self. So the Vedic chart really helps you align, feel good with your purpose, whereas the Western chart will kind of give you the um, how that purpose manifests itself in the 3D reality of the Western world, in the way that the Western world approaches things with the sun sign based astrology. So Vedic helps you satisfy your soul, and Western astrology kind of helps you get that done. So I use both systems, where I'm going to use the Vedic system and the Western system, depending what the client needs at the end of the day. So if someone's looking to figure out what their next career is, then I'll go use the Western chart. But if someone's looking to understand a deep seating of not belonging, or a deep seating of wanting to know what's going to fulfill me in my life, then I would go look at the Vedic chart. And the Vedic chart will use a different calculation, which is based on, I forget what, which is based on the constellations, whereas the
Mm.
Western sign is still based on the zodiac rather than the constellations. So that gives you about a 22 degrees difference, I think, if I remember correctly, between a Vedic interpretation and a Western one. So if you're born as an Aries in your Western chart, you might be a Pisces in your Vedic chart. So with that being said, I'll also offer one of the packages that I do as a transformation package, where I help people align themselves with their soul, where they're masters in their 3D world and their corporate world, but something feels wrong in their soul.
Mm.
So
Mm.
that's when I'll bring up their Western chart. We'll go over the Western chart, say, is this you? Then they'll say yes. And then that's when I'll guide them through transferring into the identity that the Vedic chart offers, more of that soul-based identity, rather than the corporate 3D world identity that the Western chart can potentially offer. Now, it doesn't mean that the Western chart doesn't satisfy the soul or things like that. They're just different tools and ways of interpreting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that
That
makes
makes sense.
again, especially for someone like me. I've never studied any astrology before coming to TOTAMS, which I'm kind of grateful for. I know a little bit, a tiny bit, about the more conventional or traditional Western astrology, nothing about Vedic astrology. But what I'm hearing from you is that now in this paradigm, in the TOTAMS paradigm, that obviously is archetypally based and based on intention, the intentional developmental flow of the soul as we come into this lifetime and what we want to work on in this lifetime in the various different placements, such as our ascendant and our Venus or Mars placement and the sacred inner marriage that combine those two then hopefully eventually. Mm. So that sounds kind of more in the direction of the Vedic approach rather than, the Western sun sign astrology, which there's plenty of material, obviously, within the school, within TOTAMs that explains the difference of that. So we don't have to go into that right now. So now then, from this perspective that you have there, how would you fit the shamanic astrology paradigm into that, or how does that fit in? How would that integrate now?
Yeah, great question. Because yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. It's how do you use two systems that are inherent kind of is inherently different in when the approach is. However, the way that Daniel approaches it with the totems approach, it is very soulful based. He is
Mm,
definitely looking at it from the perspective of satisfying and aligning the soul purpose. And I find he's done a great job at lining those two up, where he's because I can look at a Vedic chart and I'll reach the same conclusion as the Giamario approach or the totems approach.
mhm,
Uh, right, but I think it's easier to get there through Western astrology than it is through Vedic astrology. Like you're saying, it's it's about that sacred marriage process and learning to kind of look at the houses and the mystical points in a chart in a way, in the north node and the moon, the karmic points, you could say. Now, the Western chart doesn't necessarily approach those things, and that's based on the belief systems that we've had as a religion and as a community on the Western system. But Daniel's done a lot of work looking at these multiple systems, and I think he's done really a good job at
mm,
um, integrating the soulful approach into the Western style. Now, I do think that, and again, I'm not a fully certified up level 1 through level 5 with the school yet, so I'm not fully sure if it answers the questions that I would have that I can answer with Vedic astrology, or I don't know how much how deeply the Giamario approach can go. I do feel it does satisfy the soul and gives you good direction at a simple enough level that you're able to really get going with something. However, currently, yeah, I'm not sure how deep it can go compared to what I can do with a Vedic chart, as an example. So I am
mm,
curious to keep going down the line to see how much depth I can get. If ever I am looking at relationships or doing a relationship reading with a couple or looking at the synastry, I do prefer the Giamario approach. I do prefer the
mm,
Western totems approach at looking at the sacred marriage process, looking at the opposite sex planet and same sex planet concepts. I think those are really great when it comes to identity in a world that is somewhat fighting over gender identity. But I think those approaches can really help relationships and couples um, kind of understand themselves at a more basic level. Whereas if I'm the synastry readings I would do before um, were a little more convoluted in the information you needed to kind of figure something out. But with the totems approach, I find it's really good at understanding your masculine, feminine, and how it applies based on your sun and your moon as well, and based on your biological gender as well, or the one you identify with as rather.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's also fascinating. I have seen that actually in practice in a live event where people who had never met Daniel before, there was there were couples there as well. And so this became a topic, and especially one couple, they'd been, I think, married for 20 years. I mean, it was a long-term marriage and had, I think, 4 kids or something like that. And so when he approached their charts from this perspective and unfolded that for them, unpacked that for them, we could literally witness and see it just going click, 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 and their whole, it was incredible. Their whole, it really felt like so much got explained for them that didn't make sense for them before, and they really could start to both acknowledge and also value each other on a completely new, fresh, different, and more solid, more valid level. And I found that just so heartwarming. The room was in raptures, honestly, like, oh yeah, that's really good. So yeah, no, that's great that you're pointing that out, that when you do this work for couples, that's the work you use. May I ask, and you don't have to answer that if you don't want to, how far in you are with your studies? I mean, I am myself not yet certified. I have gone through the courses 1 to 3, which is about the basics of learning to read how to read a chart, then transits and timeline, and then the third course is the one about relationships, synastry, those kind of things. And so where are you in your studies? If you say you use that relationship material already, then you would obviously have to have gone through these 3 courses, or at least course 3 already as well.
Well, I'm not necessarily a good boy all the time, and I might have skipped to course 3 right away and not necessarily fully done course 2. I've done halfway through course 1, and I'm about halfway through course 3 right now. So that would say, but again, it's like, because of how simplified the process is with this approach, with the totems approach, if you give me one piece, I still have my own approaches that I can use. So as soon as I get one bit of information, I still have this already working paradigm that I have for myself that I use. So as soon as I saw the opposite sex planet and same sex planet and how to interpret those, I can just integrate it into my own interpretation rather than having to use the full technique. Now, I think there is going to be value once I'm done the course and have the full technique. It's just going to keep adding on to it. But it's just piece by piece. You just tell me one thing and I can integrate into what I already do because it's already its own functioning entity. Like my interpretations are already going on their own. So to add a phrase or two from Daniel's work doesn't really interfere with anything that I'm already doing, and the information and what I'm already sharing is already complete in some ways. That just getting this extra piece from Daniel is helpful to the interpretation as a whole of what I do. Now, once I do get certified, then yeah, then I'll offer totems astrology reading, and that won't be an Emitt reading necessarily, right? It's going to be fully using the system and paradigm that the totems reading would be. So that's part of the reason as well why during calls I don't necessarily share or put too much in, because the idea is to keep solid and safety in the paradigm rather than me coming in with information that might throw off the structure of what we're trying to teach. So I do appreciate this time so that I can share what my perspective or experience is, because in the calls I might feel less comfortable or inclined to, because I've got knowledge coming from other systems that don't necessarily complement or work well with the totems paradigm. So, but now I'm kind of doing the opposite, where I'm picking from the totems paradigm and adding into mine. But the idea is to get the full paradigm eventually, because yeah, it's great how it simplifies and how it makes astrology accessible to everyone, in my opinion. And that's really what the beauty of the system is, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then there's also the added factor and bonus of the actual night sky connection, which is then in the more advanced courses where it comes to material that is really hardly anywhere to be found. And I think, but even if it's just the first 3 courses, that already is a body of knowledge completely complete in itself, and that can function
100%.
without all this other advanced material. So what I find really interesting here, obviously, is that your perspective is something that hopefully might encourage other people who are already astrologers or know a lot about other astrological paradigms and maybe have operated in these paradigms for months, years, or even decades, if they want to look into this. So that you're saying, it really integrates very well. And I suppose from everything I have seen or heard so far is that it can do either. So in your case, and that might depend on who someone is as well. In your case, it really complements what you're already doing and fits in and integrates very well with that. In other cases, it might shatter someone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I think especially if someone has done exclusively the conventional sun sign astrology for a very, very long time. And there, of course, are quite big differences. And as I say, I'm personally grateful that I've come into this paradigm straight
yeah,
away. And that obviously is a different thing, right? To learn something from scratch without outside reference points, rather than have your perspective where you even have 2 different systems as outside reference points, and then integrate all of that. And when you say, once you become certified, yes, then of course there is the option for you to offer exclusively TOTAMS readings, and hopefully still to really develop your very own
oh yeah,
um, synthesis of all this. I mean, that would ultimately be the most advanced thing that one can possibly think of, rather than having to, for whatever reasons, to limit something, to say,
yeah,
oh, this is now only this paradigm, and I have to be careful to not say anything that is outside this paradigm, to just make that clear to people who come to you for a reading, maybe exactly because you have this very broad and vast framework that hardly anyone else has, right? I think Daniel has that as well, because he's looked into all the other systems and found something missing everywhere. And that's why he distilled what we have here now. And as you say, it's so elegantly simplified. And that's really what I love a lot as well. So what else? Is there anything else you would like to share? I mean, I find this very fascinating. I always feel like, yeah, here's my chart. Go on, read it. No, that's not what we, what we have the time to do today. Would be great though. But I suppose people can get together with you for reading. So I assume you have a website. What would that be? So where can people find you if they do want to learn more about this?
yeah. The best place to find me is on Facebook, for sure. That's where I'll respond the most. I'm also on Instagram. So on Facebook, I go under the name ascending facebook.com/ascending shaman. And on Instagram, my tag is EmittX, so EMITT and an X. So just simply can reach out to me there, and we can move out to the next steps of kind of what you're looking for and see if I can help. Yeah, and the other thing I would like to add is, yeah, one of the reasons I am part of the school boards, part of the council as well, is because Vedic astrology is more of a moon sign based astrology, and the moon signs have their own kind of zodiac system, and those are called the nakshatras. So there's 27 different nakshatras. And part of the work that Daniel or that I come into school to do is one of my specialties in Vedic astrology is those nakshatras. So the idea is to try and integrate those moon signs into the paradigm. And the reason you want to do that is because there's 27 and it's specific to the moon. Whereas right now we're still using the moon based on the sun signs, the sun's constellations, rather than the ones that are based on the moon. So the idea is to bring it more on a moon-based, more of a feminine-based astrology. And the paradigm already uses the moon as one of its dominant pieces, but now it's being able to bring in that extra depth from the Vedic system into the paradigm. So yeah, the idea at the end is to try and mix these systems because yeah, like you said so well, Naraya, that yeah, all of these systems are missing a perspective. Like the Western chart is missing the soul fulfillment perspective. The Vedic chart is missing the self-awareness perspective. You know, so the Vedic chart is what I'll use more for predictions and things like that because it does seem to be a little more accurate or maybe studied compared to the transit system that the Western system might use. But they all come up to the same anyways. It's just like all roads lead to Rome, right? Like it doesn't matter what road you take, you're going to get to the same place at the end of the day, and whichever one calls to you is the one you should go with. There's no one that's more right or more wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's go with someone that you understand their language. Go with an astrologer that you relate with. Don't go with someone that is the best or not the best. What matters is what you're able to get for the interpretation rather than the skill of the astrologer. Now, obviously, there is still some things to consider. And I don't mean to like throw anyone under the bus for this in any way, shape, or form, especially not any of my fellow astrologers. But whenever it comes to Vedic astrology, it's really important to connect with the planets and to connect with the night sky. So as a Vedic astrologer, I whenever I'm practicing or whenever I'm offering readings, I make sure that I have my daily sadhana, my daily way of connecting with my body so that I know what I'm going through. And I have mantras as well that I do every single day that are planetary mantras to connect with each planet on their specific day. So, and that's important to me as an astrologer, because at the end of the day, that sadhana, that daily self-care, is a way to make sure that you're not bringing yourself into the reading. That when you're reading someone's chart, to make sure that you're not projecting what you're going through. So, by having your own daily practice and your own way of connecting with the planets at that physical level, it's a way to try and remove yourself from the reading so that you're in true integrity whenever you are reading for someone. And again, this is my belief system based on the Vedic belief system of when to practice and when not to do astrology. And especially when you're doing the Vedic readings, which are more on the soul level and karmic level of things, it is really important as an astrologer um, to be guiding but not giving answers. So the only way that you're doing that is when you're not looking for answers necessarily. And when you do your sadhana, your daily care, you kind of become connected more with the stars rather than connected with yourself in a way. The meditation and the silent time is to connect with yourself. So you reach that satisfaction. So whenever you're into that intimate setting of a reading, you don't feel the need to express yourself because you've already kind of done that for yourself through your sadhana. And then this what's nice about Daniel's approach or the totems approach is, yeah, get out there and connect with the planets. Look at them, think about them, feel them. And that's something that comes from the Vedic perspective as well, where get out there, connect with Saturn, look at Saturn, do your mantra, do your Saturn mantra when you're looking at Saturn, you know, like create that relationship with the planets and they're going to feed you that energy kind of in a subconscious way that you're going to get way more from your readings as an astrologer when you do kind of take on those embodiment practices.
Mm.
So yeah, so I would say is kind of the methodology and the belief system that I'm kind of bringing to the table as an astrologer. And like I said, everyone's got their own different way of doing things. No one's right or wrong. The point is that is the interpretation there to help your client, or is the interpretation there to help you kind of boost your own ego from being right about something? And that's what's really important about discerning as an astrologer is you're there to assist the client on their journey and rather than trying to get off on yourself. And that's what I really like the totems approach is it's a consistent method that I feel gives you the really right answers that the astrologer doesn't need to be involved in his own personal self or his own ego. You can just follow the system and really get the answers that you need without having any projections kind of coming in. So
Mhm.
that's what I
Yeah,
would like to add.
great.
Yeah, sorry.
I feel there is also obviously always an intuitive aspect involved, but that is different from projecting what I might be going through on any given day to what I'm seeing on the chart for my client, right? If I have an abandonment issue, just as a random example, and I am not working with that or working through that, or I'm not even aware of that, I might see a lot of abandonment issues in people's charts. For instance,
Exactly.
our chart,
Yes.
they have one, whilst it's my own stuff, and there could be, X number of examples for that. So one of the things that I really appreciate is that this paradigm is not predictive and not prescriptive either, right?
Exactly.
This is not there to make prediction, which I think is much more pronounced in the Vedic system. One can say, okay, so what's my next career and all these kind of things. So here with totems, it's more on the archetypal level, and that is something
Yes.
very different, I feel. And it's something I greatly appreciate because I am this kind of archetypally based person. I love embodiment, I love to really go deep into each of the archetypes and say, oh, here my Venus is in that and that archetype. So that's okay. What's that all about? What are the shadows? What are the positive aspects or qualities? It's neither is negative or positive. What are the qualities that I can really extract from this and squeeze out like a beautiful, healthy juice cocktail that I can then, put in with the juicy bits of the other archetypes that are prominent on my chart, and then, go through certain transitions and timeline initiations under the umbrella whilst I drink the basic juice, right? Then I and nourish myself on that on an ongoing basis. So, and the other aspect that you also touched on lightly is that there is no judgment here. So there is no better chart or worse chart or a good chart or a bad chart. It's just simply this is the chart, and how do we really lean into what that means in our lives. This is not just something printed on a piece of paper or put up on a screen. It's really a blueprint for the soul to grow into for the rest of one's life from the moment one discovers it. And that's what I find is such an amazing journey. And in that, like a reading such as what you would offer is like a focal point, right? Or when one needs kind of a confirmation of some sorts, or maybe help with making a decision this way or that way. What now, right? Or no way at all. Maybe I need to stay here for a while without trying to move. Those kind of things, that's where I find then to have that, as I say, focal point of a reading. That's where that really comes in very handy. So I don't know how much time you still have. I am a very bad timekeeper, so I have no idea how much time we still have.
Yeah, like another 8 minutes would be good.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
great. That will perfectly go well. So I wanted to ask you, from all that you have shared, is there any aspect, and it kind of points already maybe, and I might have picked that not up correctly, into the relationship material area. Is there, what would be the aspect of the totems teaching that has impacted you or has had the most value for you personally so far, of whatever you've dipped your fingers and toes into for now?
Yeah, great question. And you had you did mention as well something just in your recent share that, yeah, the totems paradigm is very, very nice. It's very gentle. Whereas you come to a reading with me and like I'm gonna rip off the band-aid, kind of thing. So the totems approach is really helping me bring a softer approach to it. However, I do still have my own system and beliefs in it that I do think ripping the band-aid off is worth it. sometimes, but sometimes it's really not. And the totems approach really gives you the ability to make that decision for yourself, whether you want to rip it off or not. So I think there's a lot of freedom in the self-understanding that you can reach through the totems paradigm, whereas the other astrology systems don't give you any mercy, where you'll read
Mm.
something and the idea is that it can destroy you. But going through the totems paradigm, if you want it to, it will, but if not, like it's there to really support you and to take care of you, whereas the other systems are kind of a little more barbaric or aggressive in that way. Um the
Sorry, that makes me chuckle really about that. But it sounds, yeah, I get that. You know, it sounds like you get whacked with a hammer sometimes. You know, and
yeah,
in the totems paradigm, it is perfectly said as you put it in that picture to say, you know, I can make the decision myself.
yeah,
How deep I want to go with this. You know, do I
yeah,
want to rip the band-aid off, or maybe later, or not at all? You know, it
exactly.
really is a choice. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. But I would say that what's really helped me the most is bringing a different or different words to use. As an example, I really, instead of the cardinal, fixed, and mutable, having the service to spirit, culture bearing, and self-interest, I find has really been helpful when it's come to my readings to change that wording. Has been really game changing, because when I tell a Pisces that they're mutable, it's like, what? But when I tell them they're in service to spirit, they're like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's so
Um,
I find the wording, yeah, was very useful in
mm.
changing people's interpretations, and that's what I've that's affected my readings the most from totem so far, is that aspect of um changing the
Mm.
modality words. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I love that because for me, also right from the start, you know, I've obviously had heard these other words, mutable, fixed, and whatever the third one is. I can't even pull it out of my head right now, but it didn't really make a lot of sense. And when I heard this terminology of in service to self or self-interest, and in service to spirit, and in the householder, or in service to society or relationships, one could maybe also put it, that made a lot of sense
yeah,
to me. I
exactly.
have
Yeah,
to say I could immediately relate to that. So for the final few minutes, one of my favorite questions, Emmett, of this whole series and every session I do, is there anything in the stars, in the astrology right now that you would like to comment on whatsoever at all? Can be anything in your
yeah.
personal thing that impacts you, or for the collective, obviously.
I think I'm a very Saturnian based person and astrologer, and I think Saturn's in Pisces right now. Is that correct? That
It
makes sense.
is. Yes, I have just finished my
Yeah.
Saturn return a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, so that's what I would like to talk about, is really talk about Saturn in Pisces specifically. In my case, it's going through my 12th house. But basically, to me, the way I like to interpret that or limit that, and whether this is too personal or not, doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, Saturn is there to teach us about boundaries and to teach us about restrictions. And Pisces is there to teach us about unconditional love, about giving. So this time period, it's really to learn about your own boundaries around love, around unconditional love. Learn the boundaries around your loved ones. Learn the boundaries around your partners, your brothers, your sisters, your best friends. Learn the boundaries on where love is sustainable for you. You need to love yourself. So it's learning the boundaries and what you need to love yourself right now. If you're not going to love yourself right now, Saturn's going to make you aware, and it's going to bring some pain or some discomfort if you're not loving yourself in ways that you're keeping the love that you need for yourself rather than giving it for other people. So right now is a really good time to have boundaries with your loved ones, and the boundaries around the people that you love unconditionally, specifically, because Pisces is that unconditional love. So it's making sure that those people that you love unconditionally, that you have the proper boundaries to take care of yourself within. So that's really the focus astrologically that I would tell anyone to have right now is to find those right boundaries, and especially with the nodal stuff going on in Aries and Libra, it's a really good time to establish those boundaries in your relationships around love and unconditional love. So
Mm.
that's my
Oh, I
pitch.
love that, Emmett. Thank you so much. I mean, I know we are running out of time now and we need to round it off, but I could really go into this quite deeply. I have
I
Saturn in
felt that,
Pisces
yeah.
myself, and as I said, just finished the Saturn return. So for me, this has really only brought gifts into my life. And as you say, a lot of teachings about boundaries, the Saturn return and the Saturn in Pisces specifically. So it's been a really incredible and still is an incredible journey to bring boundaries into the boundaryless Pisces. So how on
Exactly.
earth do we do that, you know? And for me, that those are really valuable lessons. So thank you so much for pointing that out. Thank you
Sure.
so much for joining me here today. Shoveling, not snow. You said the snow had melted, so you didn't shovel snow to make this space in your schedule, but maybe you had to shovel something else to make this space in your schedule. I'll find out some of the links to where people can find you, put that in the description box below. And yes, once again, thank you so, so, so much. And I hope to be with you on the Totems path for quite a
Sounds
while.
good. A pleasure,
Take care.
Naraya, as always.